is The Pulse once again here on ZTN Prime. I am Tino, Chakanyuka, your host. And as usual, on this show, we keep our fingers on the pulse on goings on in Zimbabwe's highest decision-making body, Cabinet. Now, Cabinet this week met on Tuesday and discussed quite a number of issues. And among those issues that we discussed is Zimbabwe's carbon credit framework. Now, to help us unpack this framework is the Minister of Environment and Tourism, Mangaliso Ndlovu. Minister, welcome to The Pulse.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, to start with, can you break down for us in layman's terms what carbon credits are?
You know, when people talk about carbon credits, sometimes it's like in an alien language. So what happens is that what really causes climate change are carbon emissions, which then form what is sort of a cloud in the atmosphere, which makes the earth much hotter, therefore accelerating your evaporation, and then you get all sorts of extreme weather events. So it then means that for us to fight climate change, we need to come up with measures to reduce our emissions, but also to absorb emissions from the atmosphere. That way will gradually address climate change. So what then happens is, if you remember when we were doing our elementary science, that we breathe in oxygen that comes from the trees, then the trees are absorbing carbon dioxide. It's really taken from that in terms of carbon sequestration. So trees provide carbon sequestration. They absorb carbon, CO2, and therefore you find that we are now able to measure how much carbon trees can absorb, maybe a particular area. You have scientists who are trained in doing that. So if you are able to quantify how much carbon you have absorbed, and you have a company that is emitting perhaps a corresponding number of carbon. If, I'll give an example, you have 10,000 tons, that one company, it could be BP Total, in their processing of oil, they are emitting 10,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide, for instance. And you have got Minister Ndlovu, who has got 10,000 hectares and he has quantified that his forests are absorbing the same amount. So what happens is that company, wherever they are in the world, because climate change has no boundaries, can come into an arrangement with myself to say, Minister, we want to purchase your 10,000 metric tons of carbon credit, because each ton becomes one credit. And I'm able to sell it in their books. They have offset what they are omitting with what is being absorbed here. But in so doing, they enable me now to invest these resources primarily in the protection of this forest, in making sure that I don't go to cut the trees. Maybe I have alternative sources of livelihood now. I can put fire guards to make sure that I'm preventing them from being burnt down. So that is the mechanics of absorption of carbon. But there's also another side where you are preventing the emission. And this takes shape in many ways. I'll just give you an example of somebody who puts a solar farm, which then provides solar energy to households, to industries. If you do not have this solar farm, it means you are relying on the grid, and the grid gets energy generated from fossil fuel. Yeah, so the less and less reliance from fossil fuels means you are burning less fossil fuel. You are preventing emission of gases from burning fossil fuels. It therefore gives you an opportunity to say, how much have you avoided from being emitted? Again, carbon credits can be generated. But there are so many sectors. We are a country that is blending fuel. Blended fuel emits far less than unblended fuel. So as a country, we are getting to a stage where we'll start quantifying. Of course, there are already indicative figures.
That's an interesting aspect that you're bringing in there, because we have heard a lot of motorists complaining about blended fuel. Maybe if you can unpack for us the exact benefits From an environment point of view, of course.
From an environment point of view, the benefits are immense. In fact, we are cleaning the fossil fuel. Remember, oils are fossil fuel. If you are blending it with ethanol, you are making it much more greener. What I don't know really will be the mechanics of why they think their engines are not compatible. I'm really not qualified on that. But what I know is from an environment perspective, blended fuel emits far less carbon than unblended fuels. And we will be able to quantify for every 1 million liters of fuel the reduction in emissions that we make by blending fuel. Not to mention that we are blending it from ethanol that is from sugarcane growing. We also need to see if there are opportunities of quantifying carbon that we are absorbing throughout the process of growing the sugarcane themselves. So there is a whole industry that is coming into being here, which we just need to continue to invest in more and more research and benchmarking with those that are ahead of us.
Would you as a ministry then advocate for the increase in the blending threshold, perhaps, from the
my view is that the world will go that way. Of course, it will also be complemented by electric cars that are coming into being. I think our idea as a country is to blend more. It's still a question of capacity to produce adequate ethanol, which is still, I think, a bit constrained. We have gone as far as blending up to 20%. We haven't gone beyond that. And the main restriction has always been our capacity to have adequate ethanol. So if we can do more ethanol, I think it will be great news to know that Zimbabwe is blending upwards of 40%.
Oh, interesting. Now let's look at the carbon credits. How much as a country are we targeting to trade, perhaps, in a given period?
I'll be lying to you. Potentially, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. But again, the carbon prices are market determined. You know, at one time, they fell sharply to less than $1. But now when you look at the compliance market, the prices are ranging anywhere between $40 and $100 per credit. But on the voluntary market, which is what had already begun in Zimbabwe, prices are far less, sometimes between $5 and $10. So it's very difficult to put a price to it. But also, as I've highlighted, there are so many opportunities for carbon credit trading. I'll give you another example. We have Fumvudza. And the structure of Fumvudza is that it's minimal tillage. People go into the fields, they do their holes. The soils are one of the major storages of carbon. So when you till using your tractors, you are exposing carbon into the atmosphere. But with the minimal tillage that we are doing, we are avoiding emission into atmosphere. Again, it's an area that we will be engaging our counterparts in agriculture, have our scientists to see how we can work around that. So there's so many areas, quite broad, for us to then say this is how much we are expecting. We believe that if more and more of our people are able to even quote international investors, we will unlock a lot of resources from carbon credits.
But perhaps my grandmother in Chirumanzu, they would want to understand how, as a communal farmer, she can benefit from the trade in carbon credits.
So we have put in adequate safeguards. What has been happening in communities, and you need to talk to her because she may have one or the other been a victim of some people who, in my view, have been unscrupulous. So they will go to communities and they say, you know what, we are giving you total stuffs. I'm sure it's right across our rural communities. Yes, and we will celebrate, and they'll just say, you know what, we are not only giving you total stuffs, we are also giving you water purifiers. Some have gone on to say we're also sinking a bowl for you.
We've seen organizations that have actually set up water harvesting
tanks. So what then happens is they are able to say, the total stove has helped this community save forests, because if they relied on fire for energy, they would have cut so many trees. So we have now prevented them from cutting trees. It then generates credits, and they're earning millions out of it. They will say, you know what, people will use firewood, to boil water, to clean it so that it's safe for drinking. But we have now given them these water purifiers. So we have saved so much. There are always ways of quantifying this. So it's already known that 2 Tsotso stoves, I think it's around 2.5, I don't know, credits, carbon credits. But they are already established formulas. What this framework has done is to say for everyone in Zimbabwe who wants to engage in carbon credit trading has to go through the DNA, Designated National Authority, go through the rigorous process of registering this. We will keep a register of all because we also want them to go to communities with our full knowledge. Otherwise, we'll end up having different companies going to the same people, giving them Tsotso stoves and saying they are registering these. When these are traded internationally, we might be found on the wrong side to have maybe tried to prejudice the system. So we want to make sure that our system is transparent. But the process that comes from that, because it's now known, will then be distributed in an agreed or predetermined ratio, which includes the ratio that goes to communities for local development in that specific community. So there are adequate safeguards that we have put in place, and we'll try by all means to make sure that the local investment component also has participation of local communities so that they continue to learn more around it, and maybe in the near future, who knows, they will be structuring their own projects that can qualify for carbon credit trading.
Minister, as a country, we see ourselves investing in thermal power more and more. Are we not putting fuel to the same fire that we're trying to extinguish here in terms of climate change, carbon emissions?
Tell you what, it's always an interesting discussion. The reality is that we have coal in the country and in abundance, and it offers us opportunities for economic growth, opportunities for employment creation. We are not at a stage where we can say we can abandon this. I'm sure you have seen the energy insecurity that this region is facing. And if it is allowed to go like that, we'll actually have more problems than we are anticipating. Imagine the number of trees that are being cut in areas that are urban but do not have a power. So we have also seen that the major emitters have not abandoned what they have used to grow their economies. It's your big three economies. They are also the major emitters, and they have continued to do the same, because the bottom line is they have jobs to protect, they have economies to grow. So you need to make sure that you strike a good balance.
How do we strike that balance?
You continue to grow your economy. You continue to provide jobs for your people. You continue to make sure that there is reliable supply. Just transition from fossil fuel mean you transition not at the expense of the economy, not at the expense of jobs, but you make sure that you continue to create a healthy energy mix. This country, for your information, generates more of its energy from renewable energy. When you compare with most of these economies, it's more tilted towards fossil fuels.
But can we say we've done enough really to tap into the natural sources of energy that we have, solar, for instance?
No, there's great scope for growth, great scope for improvement. In fact, I believe that for our domestic use, if really we put the right structures on renewable energy investments, we should be able to supply our energy needs. There are so many, I think the Minister of Energy was telling us, more than 80 licenses that have been approved by the Minister of Energy, but no traction in terms of investment here. Although I believe that the approval of this carbon credit framework will also unlock certain financial resources for investment into the renewable energy sector, because a number of players already in solar space have successfully registered carbon credits, and they are getting additional resources from selling the energy to grid. They are also selling carbon credits.
We're witnessing an increase in mining activity in the country. How as a ministry, are you balancing the introduction of new mining companies and the need to protect the environment? Because we know, of course, the impact that mining activities have on the environment.
True. So Zimbabwe is one of the well-endowed countries, I think, in the world in terms of mineral wealth. And we need to be cautious how we exploit these minerals. We need to put adequate environmental protection safeguards as we exploit these mineral resources. So what we've done with the Ministry of Mines is to try and put a framework that will facilitate strict compliance to environmental laws. And we called it the Orderly Mining Initiative, where for you to get your mining license renewed annually, you need to have renewed your EIA certificate. So the tool that we use for ensuring that there is compliance to environmental laws is the EIA process, environmental impact assessments, where you work with EMA on how you're going to maintain environmental stewardship, you're going to conform to the environmental laws, and quarterly you are assessed by EMA, but every year now you need to have a clean bill of health, as it were, for the mining ministry to then renew your mining license. We know that traction has been slow in this, and I think some 2 weeks back, the Minister of Mines brought to Cabinet a proposal to have all mining audited, and the audit, I think, is beginning, if it has not just begun, of mining in all the provinces. So those who will be found to have run foul of the law, to have not followed this due process, will obviously have their licenses terminated. But it's at times a moving target, because people continue to discover minerals, continue to discover new areas. Before you know it, there was a rush for lithium. And still there is gold rush in certain areas. Those give us biggest headache, because people who normally go ahead would not have regularized. It will be illegal mining, and whatever they get, they are very nomadic, very mobile. They move to the next place, leaving that area environmentally damaged. So we are still debating, we are still considering a mining levy that is linked to the minerals produced, to say, can't we get 50 cents per every gram of gold? Because we know gold comes from the environment either way. So can't it contribute to a fund that then government can rely on to rehabilitate these areas? How far have you gone with this proposal? It's not a comfortable discussion, I'll be honest with you, because for instance, you have got your big mines, your Unki mines, who invest so much in environmental protection. You would find that even from EMA, they have clean bill of health, they get clean audits, they are perhaps sitting between blue and green in terms of how we rank them. Then they say, but why are we being penalized for
sins that are being committed
by others? It's now trying to find the right balance, because we are saying either way, big or small, when these companies close, they leave legacies that then the government has to deal with. Your Alaska, for instance, years after they closed, there is acid mine drainage affecting communities that are living there. But at the time, maybe they were complying with environmental laws. However, the fact that you were using these chemicals, there will be acid mine drainage much later after that. So the government needs to make sure that from the resources generated, from the wealth that people are enjoying, from the profits that some are even expatriating to other countries, let us have a pocket that we can rely on to make sure that we protect our people and our communities long beyond the life of the mine.
Okay, let's look at tourism. Bottlenecks affecting the sector's growth in Zimbabwe, some of which include internal airline connectivity. We have poor road network. The Victoria Falls Malawi Road is a case in point. How are you and your colleagues in government dealing with these shortcomings?
I I think it's good to give the right context. Our tourism sector is actually growing at rates much higher than we had anticipated, and we are quite pleased with that. I'm sure you have been witnessing even some airlines coming into the country. But more importantly is the performance of domestic tourism that we need to give due attention. And we have committed that we will be updating the nation on a quarterly basis on the performance of domestic tourism, so that we are able to interrogate it to see areas where we can intervene from a policy level, but also for the players to know the importance of domestic tourism, for them to come up with packages that promote domestic tourism. You have highlighted internal connectivity. I think we are making progress. It might not be as fast as we would like, but I'm happy that we now have flights that go to Kariba, that go to Wange, and I had a conversation with FastJet. We have begun conversation around flying into Buffalo Range, that's Mashingo, and hopefully they will link it to Beitbridge, if not Midlands. It's also a volumes game. They need to be sure that the airline, the route will be sustainable, so they need to build traction before they move into that.
But the other concern, of course, would be the pricing.
I mean, pricing is also demand and supply issue. I think as long as they are the only ones in those routes, they'll charge as they like. So we would really need our ASM to come in this space. I can say, with limited authority, of course, that something is being worked on from ASM perspective. I had a discussion with both the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Transport. I'm looking forward with a great deal of hope in terms of domestic connectivity. Road network is work in progress. It's always good to have good rains, but there is always a price to pay. And the price that we are paying, especially this time around, was such that we had good rains. It made it very difficult for the roads to be repaired during the rainy season. Engineers will tell you that you will have to go back time and again to repair. But I must say that the extent of damage was quite extensive, especially as you are highlighting Beitbridge to Bulawayo to Victoria Falls. I'm happy to say that, to my knowledge, there is already a company that has begun the refurbishment of the road, Bitumen World, and they have committed to have, I think, up to 10 teams, so that they are able to cover different stretches.
Are they time frames?
I think the Minister of Transport will know better. I will not give you that. I really don't know.
I thought maybe it's something you discussed with the team, maybe.
We do. That's why I'm telling you it's 10 teams. I think some things are technical. They are still at mobilization stage, but I know in some areas they have already moved in. I think the idea is to minimize as much as possible the time. Before you know it, you'll be approaching the rainy season. And what we want to do is to say, where areas are badly damaged, I think they'll be redoing the roads, and they'll go to those that just need patching. But the ultimate goal is, in fact, to dualize. The President has been clear, has given the instruction that after we have made the road trafficable, immediately they move to dualization of that. So I think it's work in progress. Investment in road infrastructure under the Second Republic has been amazing, and more so given that it's from internally generated resources. So it will always not be as fast as we can, but I like the commitment and the determination to say we can do this, and I'm happy that it is happening.
Okay, we are discussing domestic tourism. Some have raised concern around the pricing of different tourism packages being offered by players in the sector. They feel the pricing is not friendly for domestic tourists.
I really want to agree with that, especially when you look at the disposable incomes vis-a-vis what they have to pay. Most of our people find it very difficult to access these. Again, it's a conversation that we are seized with because there are a number of factors that contribute to this. There are cost build-up issues that we need to address, especially multiple licenses that are there that are contributing to this. There are also issues of high margins that I think our players need to address as well. Especially for domestic tourists, we are trying to encourage them to also have positive discrimination for domestic travel. We as government have been promoting domestic travel from a number of angles. I think you would know that the Minister of Finance waived VAT on all domestic activities from accommodation to tourism activities. And it saw the number of domestic travels rise from around 6 million to more than 12 million in 2022. Again, you are seeing the direct fruits of government intervention to promote businesses locally. So it's an area that we are seized with to see how we can reduce license fees and the number of licenses, but also to see how do we drive all other costs, including the margins that are being charged.
Last
Excuse me.
Zimbabwe recently signed an agreement with Eswatini during the Africa Travel Endeavour in South Africa. What are some of the benefits that likely to accrue from this agreement?
So it is the Zimbabwe Tourism Authority with the Tourism Authority of Eswatini. We believe that there is so much that we can exchange between the two countries in promoting tourism. We want to ride on the introduction of their airline coming into Zimbabwe. You know, Eswatini is one country that is difficult to access by road. You have to go via another country, and at times it becomes a bit costly. So taking advantage of this gives us an opportunity to say, how can we promote our cultural tourism the way they have done their cultural tourism? Tell you what, hotels are full in Eswatini when it is the Reed Dance. So they've done something around their culture that brings the world into Eswatini. But also remember, just recently we had the state visit by the King Mswati III. And they were impressed by our tourism products from Harare to Vic Falls to Bulawayo. And they will be soon sending a team to come and benchmark. They also want to learn more about our ZTA, how it is structured. So there's so much that we can exchange between the two, promote the visit into each other's countries by our peoples. That way we are also able to promote business. You'll find that in most cases where there is high volume of people visiting each other, there is also relatively higher trade volumes between the two. So there are numerous advantages that we have picked, that we have emphasized to our tourism boards that they need to focus more on implementation.
On that note, I should thank you very much, Minister, for joining us today on The Pulse and for allowing us, of course, to check the pulse in your ministry. I can see there is enough pulse.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time.